And so now you have this cumulative effect of lower credit score, higher interest rates for everything else you're trying to do in life. So now you're getting a car that's not as good as the one you want, that still you have to pay the cost of the one you want because your interest rate's just higher. Same thing with a house, or maybe you don't get a house. And also you're not saving, so your down payments are less, which means your payments are more. And maybe you don't ever get a house, especially, housing prices have gone up exponentially as well. So how are you supposed to save when you're that far in debt?
Is it a myth that debt is required to get a degree unless your parents can afford to pay for school?
It's possible. It's not easy. It takes work. You have to want to do it, and you have to understand the system and how the system works. One of the examples that I use is I have a friend whose boys were both going to be engineers, and they went to the University of Colorado, and they said, yep, you want to come into the engineering school, you both have good grades, great. And if you want to get into the engineering school, you basically need to come for your first 2 years. So you need to spend the whole time here. No one ever asked about family finances. No one told them that the community college, which is less than half the price and where they could live at home to go to school, has a direct feeder program right into the university. So no one goes, hey, what's the best route for the student to get this at the lowest price? Again, they just need students in seats so they can keep building more buildings. And this is what really drives you crazy when you drive around these campuses is they're all building like crazy. It's like this competition of who can put the most new things on it. I was on an airplane yesterday with a lady who's sending her kids out of state to LSU. And I literally joked that, well, at least their dorm has a lazy river. And she looked at me as though how did I know this? And she goes, it does have a lazy river. And I said, what is that total cost out of state tuition? And she said, with room and board, $55,000 a year.
Per student.
Per student per year. So Gary, you do the math and you just go, hey, the family's got 200 grand to send you to school. You could just take that money and probably buy the index and go, you know what? The index that 200 grand will make you over the next 40 years of your working life will be way more than the additional you'll get from going to college. Like, this is the other part of family money that, people don't understand. Yeah. So you can get through college without the student loan debt, but you're going to have to hustle. You're probably going to need to live at home because that's really half the cost. So if you can live at home and reduce tuition by half, if you can find some scholarships, which count double really in terms of earning power, if you can get a job, and a lot of jobs have employers now that will pay tuition reimbursement up to the roughly $5,000 a year limit. You do all those things, you can get out of school without debt or without much debt. Like, you can make this work for you and make this system okay for you. But you got to know what you're talking about. You got to know what the incentives are, and you got to get yourself on the hustle to do it. Because, a lot of kids go, I don't want to work through school. Fair enough, but it's really hard to not work through school, give up all of that opportunity cost to work, and get out without debt. And that's where. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the parents, the guidance counselors, the mentors, the leaders in the community, everybody needs to be on the same page in leading and teaching this to the students instead of just being a cheerleader to go to whatever school and get whatever degree. They need to help them formulate this kind of a game plan. David, you pose an interesting question in your book. You ask, how much of your future earnings are you willing to give away to a school for a degree? That really struck me. Would you dive into that thought and even put some math behind it?
Well, I think that is the basic question that is now lost without price discovery in terms of being able to acquire debt. And at the end of the day, it is simply you earn a degree, you go get a degree so that you can earn more money and have a better job. So that's additional earnings that you're going to have, plus the opportunity cost of going to college for 4 or more years. There is a payback on that. Just like there is a payback on buying a business, there is an ROI on that. and you need to be able to calculate that. And you need to have a realistic understanding of how much more money you're going to give away. And so it's how much debt versus how much you're going to want to work. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. You have debt you owe, and your future self is going to have to pay off these debts to your current self. And if you don't have a good understanding of how the math works, you're more and more likely to get yourself in real big trouble. And you see these stories everywhere. Like, open up any newspaper, go talk to any friends and family. Everyone's got these crazy stories of $100,000 of debt and a pseudo useless degree. And so they're giving up so much of their future. They're giving up more, right? Versus everyone thinks that, that's the pathway to the middle class, right? And it used to be, and costs were reasonable. And most of the debts were STEM degrees. But now you have these huge campuses where you can get degrees in whatever you want. And that math just doesn't work anymore. And families don't understand it because they're not teaching it. And you're exactly right. This needs to be done at every single level. Where when, as a society, are we going to say the most important thing is the student? And that means to keep the student out of big amounts of debt. That means to send the student to a school where they're going to be challenged, but not fail considerably, right? We've got people who always want to go to the highest ranked school they can get into. And the whole rankings game is nothing but a hustle. But is that what's best for you, right? What is that the place where you're going to thrive? You want to be pushed, but not pushed too far, right? We see this in sports. I played Division II basketball. I could have played Division I and sat on the end of the bench. I wanted to actually play, so I played Division II, so I got to play. And it's the same thing at school. You can go to a school that, you're not prepared for. And it doesn't mean you can't eventually get there, but you might not be prepared for it. And so I think we have this huge issue where at some point in the future, we got to decide the student is the most important thing, guiding them for their best future, which includes them understanding debt, includes them understanding, like, there's no way in my mind that students should be allowed to borrow one penny, not understanding what their total loans are going to be for 4 years and what that payment's going to be when they get out of school, and have a realistic expectation of what that job's going to pay. If you don't know those things, you're just flying blind. You're basically praying. And that's the whole point of this. This is no system to be praying in, because it's going to fail you.
What a novel idea that we put the students first in every way.
Wild, bro. Wild. I mean,
you're on the edge.
I mean, really, really far out there. It's super controversial. How about we care about the student first, and everything else comes secondary. But that's the schools have proved that's not their business. That's not their business model.
Yeah. So in school, whether it be college or even before, test scores measure one's ability to succeed on tests. But in life, on the job, in relationships, in business, there are so many more skills and abilities that can be deployed to succeed beyond just memorizing something. You touch on this in your book, No Second Chances. Would you explore this with us?
Sure. I mean, there's lots of different skills. I try to emphasize that they can't teach you everything you need to know in college. And again, this goes back to that work experience being very important. And then one of the examples that I use is, how do you know when to fire somebody? And if you've ever been part of a team, you know that within that team, a lot of times you only need really that one bad apple to be that negative influence that just sucks the life out of a team. You only need one employee that doesn't fit in. And sometimes it's not even their fault. Sometimes they're just not a good fit. It's, square plug, round hole. And most of the time when you have that situation, it's best for everybody to just part ways, because the square plug gets to go find a square hole to get into, and a team that they actually fit in with better. And so you can't really teach all of the skills that you need to manage people, to get along with people, to figure out how to work with people. And so life experience becomes more and more important. And that's just an example of, like, college can't teach you all the skills that you need. You need this interaction with many different people, and the more experiences that you get. I mean, this was always the idea behind internships, right? Before they just turned into, super recruiting events where we're going to take around the undergrads for the summer and take them to baseball games and go have fun with them, and not tell them that, as soon as you start working, all of that's out the window and you're expected to work 80 hours a week now. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if it doesn't, give me more.
Well, David, let's move on to financial aid for a moment. You talk about this pretty extensively in the book. It isn't always distributed as one would expect. In fact, you share in the book that more aid goes to families with incomes over $100,000 per year than families under $20,000 per year. How and why is that happening?
It's this interesting dynamic of, again, they need to fill seats. And everybody loves a deal, right? And I see this in athletics a lot, especially at the Division II and Division III levels, where they have minimal scholarships to give away, or in Division II, a lot of times the conferences will say, the basketball team gets 10 total scholarships for their 12 players. And so those have to be divided up between people. But it's the same thing with aid. It's essentially, they have this tuition price, which is like MSRP, which pretty much nobody pays. And then they're going to look at what the family can pay and what they will be able to pay. And again, they're just trying to fill seats. And in doing so, they're often willing to give up bigger numbers to the wealthier families who might be paying the rest in cash versus the poorer families who are then going to go borrow a lot more. And it's strange that it works that way, but it really does. And people don't really think about it until they get into it. And again, it's not like all the college kids. It's not like there's Glassdoor for college, right? Where, hey, let's all see what we're paying for tuition, right? That really doesn't exist. And so you don't know what kind of deal everybody else is getting. And everybody wants to think they're getting a great deal. And so they play the game with them.
Yeah, 99% of these kids don't even care. As long as they get to show up on campus, they don't care how much their tuition is. I mean, whether they're getting aid, scholarship money, parents are paying for it, they're taking out a loan, whatever it is, they're there. They don't care the price. Most of them.
Well, it's because they don't understand the consequences yet. If they knew the consequences later, but again, they have an 18-year-old brain, right? It's an undeveloped prefrontal cortex. Like they can't possibly understand what this is going to be for the next 40 years of their life when they've lived essentially 5 to 7 as an adult, right? I mean, you're not telling me you get to count 1 through 10 as years of, you've been alive. Yeah, but
none without responsibility, though.
None, zero, right? So a few years of responsibility, if that, and especially nowadays, more and more kids, are protected from that responsibility. Yeah. And so they don't understand that consequence. Meanwhile, what are we telling all of them? You want to be a successful person, you got to go to college, right? And that system then also fails the majority of kids who will never graduate from college that are, stuck in a high school system only designed to help kids go to college. It's wild, man. It's wild.
It really
when
is.
You dig down these holes, you end up with very unhappy answers, and you wish there was a way to solve it. To me, until it gets back to a free market and you get rid of the Department of Education being in charge of all the student loans, and either the universities have to cover or, the free market has a say in it, then I don't think this changes at all, because if you give money to everybody, you're never going to have price discovery. And, you're dealing with children who don't understand the impact of their decisions.
Well, these are all great points. So let's talk about scholarships. There's many scholarships out there that go unused. They just go unused. They're mostly unknown and they're overlooked. I have 3 kids in college. We explored all of them, and we've gotten a lot that we didn't expect to get. What factors hinder students from accessing available scholarships, and what are the long-term financial consequences of that for them, but in general, for more, for the bigger picture?
Again, this goes to that education part of, like, these are available, and then having your community there to help you with them. and also understanding that financial impact and what it really means. And so one of the things I do in one of the chapters is really try and show people the math, because people don't understand taxes. And taxes are going to take a big chunk, right? Everybody gets their first job, and when they get their first paycheck, they go, something is very, very wrong here. They did not pay me what they owe me, right? And then they go get their education of like, oh yeah, welcome to the government. They're going to take their piece. And so when you're talking about pre-tax money versus after-tax money, I just tell everyone the easy math is scholarships are worth double. It's worth double the money. Same with employers paying in for tuition reimbursement. That's double the money. So if you know that, and then you take that on as like a, hey, what would I go get paid for to have a job right now? If any of your kids, Gary, were like, hey, I'm going to go get a job right now, Dad, you go, okay, well, what's that going to pay you? $15 an hour. Okay. So let's double that to $30 an hour that you'd be getting. And let's go try and find scholarships with that time instead of going and working the job. And I'm not saying don't work jobs. I've already established there's a lot of skills you learn doing that too. Right. But make that a job. That should be a job for you, because the amount of savings you're going to get off of that is double. And people just don't emphasize it that much.
So when you're talking about double the savings, let me just see if I understand correctly. You're talking both the principal plus the years or decades of interest you're going to be paying on top of that.
Potentially, but just more like you could just take it in taxes, right? Oh, so okay. if you go earn $1 today, you're not going to get $1 in your paycheck, right? You're going to get probably 60 cents, right? Like each additional dollar, right? When you're young and you're making less, you get a little bit more. But if you're talking about, I got to repay a student loan because I didn't get a scholarship down the road. Well, now I've graduated from college. I'm making real money. I'm paying real tax rates, right? And so you start paying a real tax rate and you go, wait a minute, this pre-tax, post-tax money matters a lot. And those scholarships, you don't have to pay taxes on those. They're not considered income to you. And therefore, you don't have to pay taxes on any of them. So they're basically worth double.
It would be interesting to see, based on the average length of time it takes to pay back $1 of a student loan, and the interest that's accumulated on that dollar over that length of time, plus the taxes. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to think it might be more than double.
It's very possible, depending on that interest rate and how fast, how many times it's flipped itself over and, interest on interest, it could be more than double. But I just use double as like the easy napkin math of like, let's have a conversation about it. Like they're worth double, go get them.
So David, how does the practice of students accumulating significant debt to finance higher education impact their future decision-making for things that they want or need, the broader economy, the financial well-being of young adults in general? So here they are, they're psychologically greasing the wheel to acquire something with debt. I'm going to get my higher education. They're doing it at the time when their frontal cortex is developing. Now they're out, they got their degree, they've got this boatload of debt, and they need to get a car, they need to get a house, they need to, get this, they need to get that. What's the practice of them accumulating this significant debt to finance the education? How does that impact their future decision-making?
Well, their decision-making is probably still the same. They want the car, they want the house, they want to do all the things. The problem is when you already owe a good portion and you go to ask for more credit, the creditors then, not like when you get an education, they give you whatever money you want. Now all of a sudden the creditors look at your ability to repay and they're including that student loan payment in your ability to repay, which makes it less likely they're going to get their money, which means you have a lower credit score, which means you pay higher interest for everything along the way. And so now you have this cumulative effect of lower credit score, higher interest rates for everything else you're trying to do in life. So now you're getting a car that's not as good as the one you want, that still you have to pay the cost of the one you want because your interest rate's just higher. Same thing with a house, or maybe you don't get a house. And also you're not saving, so your down payments are less, which means your payments are more. And maybe you don't ever get a house, especially, housing prices have gone up exponentially as well. So how are you supposed to save when you're that far in debt? So I think this is everybody wants the same things. And this is why you see like the buy now, pay later just going crazy, because everyone's just trying to make it to the next stop, and really not understanding. And I won't say not understanding. Once they're out of college, by the time they're in their late 20s and 30s, they understand the burden that they're now in. The problem is it's just too late to do anything about it.
Yeah, that's sad. So I think the $1 million question is how can we break the cycle of student loan debt and provide a more sustainable path to higher education for these future generations while simultaneously increasing the individual's chances at achieving the American dream? Now, I'm not saying you've got the answer, but do you have any thoughts on that? How do we break this student loan debt cycle, still let them get in and get their degrees? Like you were saying, we need many of these people to go get degrees, but come out on in a much stronger place where they can at least have an increased chance at achieving the American dream.
I think it really only happens with the way the system's set up right now, with almost individual mentorship, where we all have friends and family who are going through these decisions. You've got 3 kids going through college. So I'm sure you can explain, and I'm sure you did explain to them what these real costs were, right? You're a financially educated person, so you understand these consequences, right? The problem we have in America is most people are not financially educated. So for those of us who are financially educated, I feel like it's our responsibility to help other people. And this is an easy way to do it. So you go mentor, the kids down the street who aren't having a financial education discussion with their parents, because their parents didn't understand finance, so they don't understand finance, right? This is generational. And if we want to really step back and look at it, Gary, we all know that it's probably intentional that they don't teach anybody about money, because they don't want them to know, so they can keep robbing them of, interest on their savings while they leave it in a bank account that pays them nothing, right? So we have to go and decide that the kids are first, and you got to make a pointed effort to go and talk to families that are making this decision. And we all have friends and family where this becomes a very difficult decision. And this has been my entire marketing approach. I'm going to people with a financial education. I'm doing podcasts on financial education, on financial networks, right? You run a metals and mining show, right? Well, you're not an investor if you don't have a financial education. So for everybody that's got that financial education that watches your show, they've got friends and family that don't. And those conversations can be very difficult. But handing them a book and just saying, hey, just go ask questions. Do you know what you're getting into and what that's going to look like in your future if you don't think about it beforehand? Because this is just it. Like I said, I just listened to a professor talk to his students, and they don't know these loans aren't dischargeable in bankruptcy. Like, we're not teaching them anything. So I think we got to do it personally. We got to mentor students and help them and their families make better decisions. And I think that word is starting to get out there now. And I think these colleges are kind of getting themselves in some trouble about what is the value and is there free speech on campus, and all of those discussions are starting to happen. But for anyone in your friends and family circle, that's the last thing you want is for their student to end up, right, in one of these nihilistic states without hope, because they've got this huge debt burden because no one sat down to have a tough conversation with them.
That's outstanding. So this has been a fantastic conversation. Before we wrap up here, and I ask David our final question, I want to point everyone over to our Substack. It's free. Go to metalsandminers.substack.com. We post free content on the consumer, economy, markets, artificial intelligence, individual metals and miners, and every single expert interview that we conduct, just like this one. They're all up there. And when you subscribe, we want to give you a free gift. It's a report that we wrote. It's based on the important Ray Dalio foundational premise. It's titled, "If You Don't Own Gold, You Know Neither History Nor Economics." This free gift is a must read for everyone on why we all should own gold. So head over to metalsandminers.substack.com, put in your email address, and receive the free gift on us. Also, I'm positive that you've enjoyed the conversation with David as much as I have. Would you please let him know? Hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment below the video. It's now time for our Golden Nugget segment. David, let's discuss how our children can avoid this crushing debt. How can current and future students develop strategies to minimize student loan debt and be put on a path to achieving financial independence even upon graduation?
Ask a lot of questions. Keep asking more and more questions. Do not take what they tell you for the first answer for granted. Do not assume that that is the right answer. If it is not the answer that you want to hear of how do I stay out of debt, those people are not serving you as the student. You want people who are doing things in your best interest. And you can ask them that question directly. Do you feel like this in my best interest? And see what response you get out of them. Because a lot of times you'll get that like weird little flinchy thing where they're like trying to lie and can't figure it out. So ask them more and more questions. Is there anything else that I can do to be in less debt? And sit down and have those conversations with your family.
And maybe even tap into some available resources out there, like your book or some other resources, a mentor that has been there and done that and has helped folks get scholarships or pointed people in the right direction, or knows other avenues of financial aid or strategies. I mean, it's just critically important to surround yourself with knowledgeable, caring people who want to put you, the student, first, or your children, the students, first. As you were talking about earlier, they're just not being put first.
Yeah. And then have a plan, have a goal, right? Understand what you're after here. What you're after is a better future for yourself and for your family. So how do you make sure that you get that? You need to have a comprehensive understanding of everything you're getting into with spending north of $100,000 for a degree. And that's really what it comes down to.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on to the Metals and Miners podcast, for being so generous with your time, your analysis, your ideas, and for sharing about all the concepts in your book, No Second Chances, A Family Guide to the College Decision and the Lasting Impact of Debt. It's really been wonderful to spend this time with you. Would you please share with the viewers, what's the overall theme that you want to leave with those tuning in? Where can they learn more about your work and how can they connect with you?
It's just that we all have this opportunity to be mentors to the next generation. And it's a hard sled for them right now with the way things have gone. And that's not their fault, but they're going to have to deal with it. And so the book is available on Amazon, and I made it really easy. The next time you order from Uncle Jeff, just click the delayed delivery, give me my credits. $3 will get you the Kindle version of this book. Send it to someone in your friends and family circle. Let them read it. Let them have the opportunity to understand the system that they're about to get themselves into and how they can prevent themselves from becoming entrapped in debt.
That's amazing. Okay, well, I'm going to put that up on the screen, and everybody go order the book. This is a very deep insight. It, as family members, as we're dealing with an economy that's more and more expensive, and it goes on and on and on, more and more expensive. Savings are getting drained, credit cards are getting tapped, more and more families are struggling, and the children who are coming into their college years or already are, or just after, they're living at home more, they're coming back to the house afterwards because it's just too expensive out there. So this burden, this $100,000 plus burden isn't just on the children. The longer this goes on, it's now also falling on the entire family. So it behooves all of us to take this. It takes a village to raise our kids. It takes a village to make a difference like this. And it behooves us in our own benefit also to, get knowledgeable, get the skills that are needed, get the tips and the tricks and the hacks that are needed to help our children avoid this crushing debt.
Couldn't agree more, Gary.
Well, I look forward to having you back on with us sometime in the future, David. Thank you for being here with us, and everybody else, thank you for watching.
Happy to do it. Thanks for sharing the message.
I want to point everyone over to our Substack. It's free. Go to metalsandminers.substack.com. We post free content on the consumer, economy, markets, artificial intelligence, individual metals and miners, and every single expert interview that we conduct, just like this one. They're all up there. And when you subscribe, we want to give you a free gift. It's a report that we wrote. It's based on the important Ray Dalio foundational premise. It's titled, "If You Don't Own Gold, You Know Neither History Nor Economics." This free gift is a must read for everyone on why we all should own gold. So head over to metalsandminers.substack.com, put in your email address, and receive the free gift on us.